In a production meeting in 1970, a producer made a mistake. He assumed Marlon Brando was just an actor. He said it out loud, in front of the director, in front of the studio executives, in front of Brando. For 40 minutes, Brando said nothing. Then, as the meeting was ending, he spoke once. What happened next wasn't loud. It was accurate. The meeting was scheduled for 2 p.m., budget review, mid-production. The film was 3 weeks behind schedule and $70,000 over, not catastrophic yet, but moving in that direction. The conference room was on the third floor, long table, heavy wood, script drafts stacked at one end, coffee cups between financial sheets and production reports. Outside, through thick glass, the lot moved through another ordinary afternoon. The producer arrived first, early, always early. He spread his materials with practiced efficiency. Budget breakdowns, schedule projections, line items highlighted in yellow where costs had exceeded estimates. Each document positioned deliberately, easy to reference, easy to use as evidence. He'd produced 11 films. 10 had come in on budget. 1 had gone over by 4% and he'd taken heat for it. Never again. This film would not be the second. The director came next, younger, talented, carrying the weight of a film that was good but troubled, vision meeting reality. He sat 3 chairs down from the producer, his notes thinner, more defensive. He knew what this meeting was about. 2 studio executives entered together, mid-level authority, not decision-makers but close to them. They took positions at the far end, neutral territory, observers. They'd let the producer run this. That's what he was here for. Marlon Brando arrived exactly at 2 p.m., dark slacks, plain shirt, no tie. He took the chair nearest the door. His script was closed, no notes, no papers. He sat without acknowledging anyone, didn't open the script. The producer checked his watch. Let's get started. He opened the budget report, laid out the situation with precision, the delays, the overruns, the pressure from upstairs. He didn't editorialize, just presented the numbers. This was his expertise. 3 weeks behind, 70,000 over. We've absorbed some overages, but we're approaching the limit. After that, the studio starts making decisions for us. He let that sink in. The executives watched. The director looked at his notes. We need to make adjustments, cut days where we can, streamline setups. I've identified 12 scenes where we can reduce without compromising quality. The director's jaw tightened. That scene is critical. 2 minutes of screen time. We can accomplish the same thing with tighter framing. The director looked at his notes, started to speak. The producer was already turning the page. Scene 51, already streamlined. We keep that as is. He made a check mark. But scene 54, we cut the establishing shot, go straight to the interior. That establishing shot provides context, the director said. It provides time we don't have. The audience will understand the location from the dialogue. The producer looked up. We're doing this. The director glanced at the producer, then back at his notes. Didn't push. The executives watched. One made a mark on his pad. The other leaned back slightly, measuring who had control. The director glanced at Brando. Brando hadn't moved, was looking at the table with complete stillness. 30 minutes in, the director brought up a character element, a moment Brando had suggested during rehearsal, something that added texture without adding cost. It's good, the director said. It deepens. Does it serve the story? The producer asked. Yes, but does it serve the budget? The director paused. It doesn't cost anything. It's just a choice Marlon made. Then let's table it. The producer made a note. We can discuss performance choices later. Right now, we're talking about production. The director's face flushed. Performance and production aren't different departments. He set his pen down, looked at the director, then briefly at Brando. We have a structure. I handle logistics. You handle creative execution within those logistics. That's how we stay on schedule. The producer glanced at the executives, back at the director. I respect the creative process, but we have roles. I manage production, you direct. Actors perform. Everyone stays in their lane, We make good films on time and on budget." The room was quieter now. The director's hand tightened on his pen. The producer continued. His voice remained calm. "Actors have critical jobs, but that job is to perform what's written, hit their marks, trust the people managing the larger picture. They're not brought in to think about budget constraints. They're not here to second-guess scheduling." He said it without looking at Brando, but everyone understood. "You're here to perform, not think." He delivered it the same way he delivered everything else, an observation about reality. A beat. One of the executives set his pen down, completely, not just lowering it, setting it down. The director's eyes went to Brando. The other executive shifted in his chair, the movement small but audible in the silence. Brando's expression didn't change, still looking at the table, but something about his stillness had weight now, like silence had become presence. The producer moved on. More line items, more adjustments. The director pushed back less now. "Scene 58, night exterior, full crew scheduled. I'm proposing day for night with reduced personnel. Saves 20,000. The director hesitated. "That scene needs atmosphere. The DP can create it in post." The producer glanced at Brando, just once, brief, like checking if a statue had moved. It hadn't. He turned back to his notes. "Scene 62, the restaurant. 15 background actors, I'm cutting it to 8. They might notice," the director said quietly. "They won't. Audiences don't count extras." The director looked at Brando, longer this time, like he was waiting for something, support, intervention, anything. Brando's eyes stayed on the table. The director looked back at his notes. One of the executives made a small notation. The other glanced at Brando, then at his watch. "Scene 70, argument in the car. Process shot scheduled. I want stationary car." The director didn't respond, just made his note. "Scene 74, the monologue. 6 takes scheduled. I'm limiting to 3. The producer didn't look up. Brando doesn't need 6 takes. He's a professional. The director's pen stopped. He glanced at Brando one more time. Nothing. No reaction, no movement. The producer flipped to another page. "Scene 81, the confrontation. You have 2 camera setups. I'm cutting to 1. We can't afford the time." "That scene needs coverage," the director said. "If the angles don't work, then the angles need to work the first time." The producer made his mark. 1 setup, next. The director's hand tightened on his pen. He looked at Brando again. Still nothing. "Scene 90, the resolution. Full page of dialogue. I'm proposing we cut it to half a page, trim the exposition. That dialogue establishes information we can convey visually. Cut it." The director made his note, didn't argue. The producer continued. Each cut precise, each decision final. The director's resistance had evaporated. The executives watched without intervention, and Brando sat there, silent, watching the producer reduce the film to numbers. 40 minutes into the meeting, the producer began wrapping up, gathering his papers, stacking them with the same efficiency he displayed opening them. "I'll distribute revised schedules tomorrow morning," he said. "We implement starting next week. Questions?" The director shook his head. The executives remained silent. "Good," the producer said. He closed his folder, checked his watch. One executive was already standing, buttoning his jacket. The other reached for his briefcase. The director started gathering his notes, slower, his movements heavy. The producer stood, straightened his jacket, smoothed the front, picked up his folder. He dominated this meeting completely. Everyone knew it. Half a second pause. Brando stood. The producer's hand stopped on his jacket. One executive froze mid-button. The other's briefcase stayed on the table. The director's hands stopped moving. Because Brando hadn't spoken for 40 minutes, hadn't moved except to sit down at the beginning, and the way he stood made everyone stop. Not abrupt, not theatrical, just rising. But something in the stillness before the movement made it impossible to ignore. He looked at the producer, direct eye contact, the first time he'd looked at anyone. The producer met his gaze, his folder in his hands, meeting over. But he hadn't moved toward the door. He was waiting. Everyone was waiting. Brando's voice was quiet, flat. The only thing you've ever created is the illusion that you're necessary. 2 seconds. The producer's face didn't change. Then his jaw shifted. The corners of his mouth tightened. His breathing changed. The executives stood frozen. The director had stopped moving. The producer's hand reached for his folder, missed it, grabbed it on the second attempt. His face was flushing, color rising from his collar. He opened his mouth, closed it. Outside, a car alarm went off, stopped. The producer picked up his folder. His hand was shaking, just enough to make the papers shift. He walked toward the door, not running, just walking, but something in the movement was broken. He reached the door, put his hand on the handle, paused. He didn't turn around. He opened the door, left. The door closed. Nobody moved. The executives looked at each other. The director looked at his notes. One executive cleared his throat. "We're done." They left quickly, professional. The director and Brando were alone. The director sat back down. Jesus. Brando picked up his script. "He's going to the studio." "No." "You don't know." Everyone in this room saw it. The director absorbed that. Saw what? "He manages the appearance of being necessary." Brando moved toward the door. "Works until someone names it." "You named it in front of the executives." "Yes. That's why he left. He left because defending it proves it." He walked to the door, put his hand on the handle where the producers had been 60 seconds earlier. The director called after him, "Marlon!" Brando stopped, didn't turn around. That was... The director searched for the word. "Necessary?" "Yes," Brando said. He opened the door and walked out. The director sat alone, papers scattered, coffee cups cold, budget reports still open. He gathered his notes, closed his folder, stood. He glanced back at the chair where Brando had sat. 40 minutes, one sentence. The producer didn't attend the next production meeting, sent his assistant. When he returned to set 2 weeks later, he gave notes through the director, kept distance. The film finished shooting, slightly over budget. Released 8 months later, critics praised the performances. The film held in theaters for 7 weeks. The studio made its money back in the first 3. At the next production meeting, different film, the producer was presenting budget proposals. Mid-sentence, talking about location costs, one of the executives interrupted him. "Hold on," the executive said, turned to the director. "What do you need for that location?" The producer stopped talking, stood there, papers in hand. The question hadn't been directed at him. The director answered the executive directly. They discussed it for 2 minutes. The producer waited. When they finished, he tried to continue his point about cost savings. The executive was already moving to the next item. The producer didn't finish his point, just made a note, sat down. The room had seen something. It couldn't unsee it. In a conference room in 1970, Marlon Brando said one sentence, 15 words. The producer left first. The meeting dissolved. Brando was last to stand. The director caught him in the hallway. That was... Brando looked at him. Necessary. He walked away. The producer never spoke to him like that again.